found out my dead father has been living 20 minutes away this whole time. My whole life has been a lie, and I don't know who to trust anymore. I'm Jessica, 28F. My father, David, supposedly died in a car accident when I was 5 years old. I put father in quotes because, well, you'll understand why in a minute. My mom, Linda, remarried when I was 8 to my stepdad, Tom, who legally adopted me and gave me his last name. Tom's been amazing. He's the only dad I've ever really known, and he's been nothing but loving and supportive my entire life. Growing up, I didn't have many memories of David. Mom always said that was normal since I was so young when he died. She kept a few photos of him around the house, him holding me as a baby, one from their wedding, that sort of thing. Whenever I asked about him, she'd get this sad, distant look and tell me he was a good man who loved me very much, but that talking about him was too painful. She'd usually change the subject pretty quickly. I accepted this. Why wouldn't I? When you're a kid, you believe what your parents tell you. And honestly, Tom filled that father role so completely that I rarely felt like I was missing anything. He taught me to drive, walked me down the aisle at my wedding 2 years ago, and calls me his daughter without the step prefix. He's been my dad in every way that matters. But 3 weeks ago, everything I thought I knew about my life got turned completely upside down. I was mindlessly scrolling through Facebook during my lunch break. You know how it is. Just killing time looking at random posts and ads. A friend of a friend had posted some family photos from a barbecue, and I was half paying attention when one of the faces in the background made me stop scrolling. There was a man in his 50s, graying hair, wearing a blue polo shirt, standing with his arm around a woman and 2 teenage kids. He was partially turned away from the camera, but something about his profile made my heart skip a beat. He looked familiar in a way that didn't make sense. I stared at that photo for probably 10 minutes, zooming in and out, trying to figure out why this random stranger was giving me such a weird feeling. Then it hit me like a truck. He looked exactly like my biological father. Not similar. Exactly like what I'd imagined David would look like now, 23 years older. But that was impossible. David died in 2001. This photo was posted 2 days ago. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Lots of people have similar features. I was probably just seeing what I wanted to see, or maybe I was having some kind of weird psychological episode brought on by work stress. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, I went home and dug out the old photo albums Mom kept in the hall closet. I found the pictures of David and held them up next to my laptop screen, comparing them to the Facebook photo. The nose was identical, the shape of his eyes, the way he held his left shoulder slightly higher than his right. Even the way he smiled. This half smirk that was both charming and a little cocky. My hands were shaking as I clicked on the woman's profile who had posted the photo. Her name was Karen Mitchell, and according to her info, she lived in Riverside, which is literally a 20-minute drive from my house. I started going through her photos, and my blood ran cold. There he was, over and over again. David, or someone who looked exactly like him, in dozens of family photos spanning back years. Christmas mornings, birthday parties, family vacations, graduation ceremonies. Always with the same woman and 2 kids. A boy who looked about 17 and a girl who looked maybe 15. In one photo from what looked like a recent family vacation, he was wearing a t-shirt that said "World's Best Dad." The timestamp showed it was taken 4 months ago. I felt like I was going to throw up. I spent the next 3 hours going through every single photo on Karen Mitchell's Facebook profile. What I found painted a picture of a completely normal, happy family. Beach vacations, school concerts, little league games, family dinners. A man who looked exactly like my supposedly dead father, living a full, rich life with a wife and kids who clearly adored him. The kids called him Dad in the comments. Karen's posts referred to him as her husband of 19 years. 19 years. If my math was right, that meant they'd gotten married in 2005, 4 years after he supposedly died. But here's the part that really messed with my head. In some of the older photos, the ones from maybe 10 or 12 years ago, I could see what looked like my own baby photos in the background of their living room. Framed pictures that looked exactly like the ones Mom had always told me were of me and David. I took screenshots of everything. I probably saved 50 photos to my phone that night, cross-referencing dates and trying to make sense of what I was seeing. By 2 a.m., I had to face what felt like an impossible truth. My father wasn't dead. He was alive, married to someone else, and had been living 20 minutes away from me for my entire adult life. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to process what this meant. Had my mother lied to me for 23 years? Had David abandoned us and started over with a new family? Why would Mom make up such an elaborate story about him dying? The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus on anything except the photos on my phone and the million questions racing through my mind. I decided I needed more information before I confronted anyone. So, I did something that probably makes me sound like a crazy person. I drove to Riverside. It took me 3 tries to find the address listed on Karen's Facebook profile. It was a nice neighborhood. Not fancy, but well-maintained. 2-story houses with actual yards, the kind of place where kids ride bikes in the street and neighbors wave at each other. I parked across the street from the house and just sat there, feeling like the world's creepiest stalker. I didn't know what I was hoping to see or what I planned to do if I actually saw him. After about an hour, the garage door opened and a silver Toyota Camry backed out of the driveway. The man driving looked exactly like the person in the Facebook photos, exactly like what I imagined David would look like now. He drove right past me, close enough that I could see his face clearly through the windshield. Same blue eyes I saw in the mirror every morning, same slightly crooked nose that I'd inherited, same hands gripping the steering wheel, hands that looked exactly like mine. I followed him. I know how that sounds, but I had to know more. He drove to a Home Depot, parked, and went inside. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, working up the courage to follow him in. When I finally did, I spotted him in the paint section, looking at color samples with a teenage boy who had his same dark hair and build. "What do you think, Dad?" the boy said, holding up 2 different shades of blue. "Mom wants the lighter one for the kitchen, but I think this one would look better." "Your mom's usually right about these things," the man replied, and his voice made my knees go weak. It was David's voice. I recognized it from the few home videos Mom had shown me over the years. A little deeper now, maybe, but unmistakably the same. I stood there in the paint aisle, pretending to look at primer while listening to my supposedly dead father have a perfectly normal conversation with his son about kitchen paint colors. They bought the lighter blue paint and some brushes, laughing about something the boy said that I couldn't quite catch. I watched them load their purchases into the Camry and drive away, the boy in the passenger seat talking animatedly while David nodded and smiled. I sat in the Home Depot parking lot and cried for 30 minutes. When I got home that evening, Tom was in the kitchen making dinner. He took one look at my face and immediately asked if I was okay. "Tom," I said, sitting down at the kitchen table, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." He turned off the stove and sat down across from me, looking concerned. "Of course. What's wrong?" "Did you ever meet David? My biological father?" Tom's expression changed instantly. He got that same look Mom always got when David's name came up, uncomfortable, like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Jessica, why are you asking about this? Just, please answer the question. Did you ever meet him?" Tom was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with something. "Yes," he said finally. "I met him once." "When?" "Right after your mom and I started dating seriously. He came to the house." My heart started pounding. "What do you mean he came to the house? I thought he was dead." "Jessica," Tom looked absolutely miserable. "Your mother should be the one to have this conversation with you." "Tom, please, I need to know. When did he come to the house?" He sighed heavily and ran his hands through his hair. "It was about 6 months after we started dating. You were maybe 9 years old. He showed up at the front door one evening while you were at a sleepover. He said he wanted to see you." The room started spinning a little. "What happened?" "Your mother wouldn't let him in. They had a huge fight on the front porch. I could hear them from inside, even though they were trying to keep their voices down. He kept saying he had rights, that he wanted to be part of your life, Your mom told him he'd made his choice years ago and that it was too late. What choice? What did she mean? I don't know all the details, Jessica. Your mother never told me the whole story, and I never pushed because it seemed too painful for her. But from what I could piece together, he left when you were very young. Just disappeared. Didn't pay child support, didn't call, didn't visit. Your mom was raising you completely on her own when we met. But you said he came to the house, so he wasn't dead. No, sweetheart, he wasn't dead. Your mother told you that because, well, I think she thought it would be easier for you than knowing he'd chosen to leave. I felt like I might throw up again. Has he tried to contact me since then? Tom looked even more uncomfortable. A few times over the years. Always through your mother, never directly. She never told you because she was trying to protect you. She was afraid he'd hurt you again by disappearing. Protect me from what? From having a relationship with my father? Jessica, you have to understand. Your mother watched you cry yourself to sleep for months after he left. You kept asking when Daddy was coming home, and she had to tell a 5-year-old that she didn't know. She was trying to spare you from going through that again. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. Where is she? She's at book club until 9. Jessica, please don't do anything rash. Talk to her calmly. There's more to this story than you know. But I was already grabbing my keys. I drove to the community center where Mom's book club meets, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. 23 years. 23 years of believing my father was dead, of visiting his supposed grave on Father's Day, of wondering what he would have thought of my achievements, my wedding, my life. The parking lot was mostly empty, except for a few cars clustered near the main entrance. Through the windows, I could see a group of women sitting in a circle, discussing what looked like their monthly selection. My mom was there, gesturing animatedly about something, looking completely normal. Like she hadn't spent over 2 decades lying to my face about the most fundamental fact of my existence. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, trying to calm down enough to have a rational conversation. But every time I thought about those Facebook photos, David at graduations and Christmas mornings with his other kids, I felt this rage building up in my chest that I'd never experienced before. Finally, I got out and walked to the entrance. The receptionist buzzed me in, and I made my way to the meeting room. Through the glass doors, I caught my mom's eye. She looked surprised to see me, then concerned when she saw my expression. She excused herself and came out into the hallway. Jessica? Honey, what are you doing here? Is everything okay? We need to talk. Now. Something in my voice must have scared her because she didn't argue. She went back into the room, made her apologies to the group, and grabbed her purse. Let's go to my car, she said quietly. We sat in her Honda Civic in complete silence for about 30 seconds before I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshot of David at the family barbecue. The color drained from her face completely. Jessica, where did you get this? Facebook. His wife posted it 3 weeks ago. I swiped to another photo. Here's one from Christmas morning. And here's one from their family vacation to Florida last summer. And here's my personal favorite, him wearing a World's Best Dad t-shirt with the 2 kids he actually chose to raise. Mom stared at the phone like it was a bomb that might go off in her hands. How long have you known? She whispered. I've known he was alive for 3 weeks. I've known you've been lying to me for about 6 hours, ever since I talked to Tom. What I don't know is why. Why would you tell me my father was dead when he's been living 20 minutes away this entire time? She closed her eyes and leaned back against the headrest. When she opened them again, they were filled with tears. Because I was trying to protect you. Protect me from what? From having a father? From being rejected by him again. From getting your hopes up just to have him disappoint you over and over. Again? I stared at her. What do you mean again? Mom was quiet for so long, I thought she wasn't going to answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. He didn't just leave us, Jessica. He chose them over us. What are you talking about? She took a shaky breath. David was married when I met him. To Karen. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. Karen, the woman from the Facebook photos. You mean you were the other woman? I was 22 and stupid and completely head over heels for a man who told me he was going to leave his wife. Karen was pregnant with their first child when David and I started our affair. He said the marriage was over anyway, that they were only staying together for the baby, that he'd file for divorce after the child was born. I felt sick. But he didn't. No, he kept making excuses. The baby needed stability. Karen was having postpartum depression. It wasn't the right time. Meanwhile, he was spending 3 or 4 nights a week at my apartment, telling me he loved me, planning our future together. And then you got pregnant with me. When I told him I was pregnant, he was actually excited at first. He said it was a sign that we were meant to be together, that now he'd have the motivation he needed to finally leave Karen. He promised me that by the time you were born, we'd be a real family. She paused to wipe her eyes with a tissue from her purse. You were born on a Tuesday in March. David was there for the birth. He held you, cut your umbilical cord, cried when he saw you for the first time. He told me you were the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. He stayed with us in the hospital for 2 days. What happened? Karen found out. I don't know how. Maybe she got suspicious about where he was spending so much time, or maybe someone saw us together. But she figured out he had been having an affair and that he had another child. Mom's voice got harder, angrier. She gave him an ultimatum, her and their son, or me and you. She said if he chose us, she'd make sure he never saw his first child again. She'd move across the country, change their names, whatever it took. But if he cut all contact with us, she'd stay and they could work on their marriage. And he chose them. He came to see you when you were 6 weeks old. He held you for about an hour, crying the whole time. He told me he was sorry, that he loved both of us, but that he couldn't lose his son. He said Karen was right. He'd already destroyed one family, and he couldn't destroy another one. I stared out the windshield at the community center, trying to process what I was hearing. So he just left? He said it was better for everyone if he made a clean break, that it would be too confusing and painful for you to grow up knowing you had a father who couldn't be with you full time. He thought it would be easier if he wasn't in your life at all. But Tom said he came to the house when I was 9. Mom nodded. That was the first time I'd seen him since you were a baby. He'd heard through mutual friends that I was dating someone seriously, and I think it freaked him out. He showed up demanding to see you, saying he'd made a mistake, that he wanted to be part of your life. What did you tell him? I told him no. I told him he'd made his choice when you were 6 weeks old, and he didn't get to waltz back in and confuse you just because he was having regrets. That wasn't your decision to make. The words came out louder than I intended. That was my decision. You should have let me decide whether I wanted a relationship with him. Jessica, you were 9 years old. You couldn't make that kind of decision. Then you should have let me make it when I turned 18, or 21, or at any point in the last 10 years when I was an actual adult. Mom was crying harder now. I was terrified he'd hurt you again. I was terrified you'd get attached, and then he'd decide it was too complicated and disappear again. You were so happy with Tom, so stable. I didn't want to mess that up. So you told me he was dead. I thought it would be easier than explaining that your father chose another family over you. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Easier? Mom, do you know how many nights I cried because I thought my dad was dead? Do you know how many times I wished I could talk to him just once to tell him about my life? Do you know how guilty I felt for not remembering him better? I know. I'm sorry, I thought I was doing the right thing. And what about later? What about all the other times he tried to contact me that Tom mentioned? She wiped her nose with another tissue. He sent cards on your birthdays until you were about 16. Christmas cards too. Always through me, never directly to you. He'd ask how you were doing, if you were happy, if you needed anything. He sent money sometimes. Money? For school clothes, or when you needed money for that class trip to Washington, D.C. in 8th grade, or when your car broke down in college. I never told you it was from him. I said it was from me and Tom. My head was spinning. He's been helping support me this whole time? Not regularly. Just when big things came up. He said he couldn't be your father, but he still wanted to make sure you were okay. I thought about all the times growing up when money had been tight, but somehow Mom had always managed to find the funds for things I needed. The new laptop for college that she said was on sale. The deposit for my first apartment that she claimed was from her savings. The check that magically appeared when I needed to replace my transmission senior year. When was the last time you heard from him? Your wedding day. I stared at her. What? He sent a card and a check. He said he knew he didn't have the right to be there, but that he wanted to contribute something to your special day. The check was for $5,000. $5,000. The exact amount we'd been short for our wedding after some unexpected expenses came up. The amount Mom had insisted on covering as her mother of the bride gift. You used his money for my wedding? I used it to make sure you had the wedding you wanted. That's all that mattered to me. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to add up everything I'd just learned. My father wasn't dead. He'd been sending money and staying updated on my life for 23 years. He'd contributed to my wedding. He lived 20 minutes away and had been watching me grow up from a distance while raising the family he'd chosen over us. Does he know I know? What? Does David know that I've found out he's alive? Mom looked terrified. No. Why would he know that? Because I've been thinking about contacting him, about going to his house and confronting him. Jessica, no, please don't do that. Why not? Don't I have a right to hear his side of the story? Don't I have a right to decide for myself whether I want him in my life? What about Karen and her kids? They don't know about you. You showing up on their doorstep would destroy their family. Their family. I was getting angry again. What about my family? What about the fact that I have two half-siblings I've never met? What about the fact that my father has been living a complete life 20 minutes away from me and I didn't even know? Jessica, please, think about what you're saying. Those kids are innocent in all this. They don't deserve to have their world turned upside down. And I did? I deserved to think my father was dead for 23 years? We sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us crying. Finally, Mom reached over and took my hand. What are you going to do? She asked quietly. I don't know. But I'm done with the lies, Mom. I'm done with other people making decisions about my life for me. Are you going to tell Tom? Tom already knows more than he let on. We're all going to sit down together tonight and you're going to tell me everything. Every card, every phone call, every penny he sent. I want to know all of it. She nodded miserably. And then I'm going to decide for myself whether I want to reach out to him. Jessica, please think carefully about this. Once you open this door, you can't close it again. I looked at my mom, this woman who had raised me, loved me, protected me in the only way she knew how, but who had also lied to me every single day for over 2 decades. Mom, that door was never closed. It was just hidden from me. I started the car. Follow me home. We're having a family meeting. As I drove back to the house, my phone buzzed with a text message. For a wild moment, I thought it might be from David somehow. But it was from my husband, Mark, asking if I was okay since I'd seemed upset when I left for book club. I realized that in a few hours I was going to have to explain to my husband that everything he knew about my family was a lie. That the father-in-law he thought was dead might actually be alive and living in the next town over. But first, I needed to hear the rest of the story. And then I needed to decide whether I was brave enough to knock on David Mitchell's door and introduce myself to the father who chose another life over me. Here's the text exactly as you wrote it, repeated back in full. The family meeting that night was brutal. Tom, Mom, Mark, and I sat around our kitchen table while Mom laid out 23 years of secrets like evidence in a trial. Every birthday card David had sent. Every Christmas gift he'd contributed to without me knowing. Every time he'd called to ask how I was doing in school, if I was happy, if I needed anything. Mark kept looking between me and Mom like he was watching a tennis match, trying to process that his wife's supposedly dead father was not only alive, but had been secretly involved in my life all along. So let me get this straight, Mark said slowly. Jessica's biological father has been sending money and staying updated on her life for over 20 years, but she was told he died in a car accident? It's more complicated than that, Mom said defensively. No, it's really not, I interrupted. He chose his other family over me when I was 6 weeks old. And instead of letting me know the truth so I could make my own decisions as an adult, everyone decided it was easier to let me think he was dead. Tom reached over and squeezed my shoulder. Jessica, your mother was trying to protect you from getting hurt. By lying to me every single day for 23 years? The conversation went in circles for 2 hours. By the end of it, I was emotionally exhausted and more determined than ever to get answers directly from David. I'm going to contact him, I announced as we were cleaning up. Jessica, please, Mom pleaded. Just think about it for a few more days. Don't make any rash decisions. I've been thinking about it for 3 weeks. I'm done thinking. Mark walked me to our car afterward. Are you sure about this? He asked quietly. Once you reach out to him, everything changes, for all of you. Everything already changed the moment I saw that Facebook photo. The only question now is whether I'm going to spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened if I'd been brave enough to find out the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at my phone, scrolling through David's Facebook photos, trying to work up the courage to send him a message. What do you even say to the father who's been secretly watching your life from a distance for over 2 decades? By morning, I decided that a Facebook message felt too impersonal. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. Face to face. I called in sick to work again and drove back to Riverside. This time, instead of just sitting in my car like a stalker, I parked in the driveway and walked up to the front door. My hands were shaking as I rang the doorbell. The woman who answered was Karen. I recognized her immediately from the Facebook photos. She was probably in her early 50s, with shoulder-length blonde hair and kind eyes. She looked like the type of person who volunteered at school fundraisers and made homemade cookies for her neighbors. "Can I help you?" she asked with a friendly smile. "Hi, I'm looking for David Mitchell. Is he home?" "He's at work right now, but he should be back around 6. Can I ask who's asking?" This was it, the moment where I either chickened out or changed all our lives forever. "My name is Jessica. I'm his daughter." Karen's face went completely white. For a moment, I thought she might faint. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "I'm Jessica Porter." "Well, Jessica Porter now. I got married 2 years ago, but I was born Jessica Mitchell. David is my biological father." She grabbed onto the doorframe for support. That's impossible. David doesn't have any other children." "He does. I'm 28 years old. I was born in March of 1995. My mother's name is Linda." Karen stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her mind racing, doing the math, trying to make sense of what I was telling her. "You need to leave," she said quietly. "I know this is a shock, but I just want to talk to him. I found out recently that he's alive, and I have questions that only he can answer. You need to leave right now." Her voice was getting louder, more panicked. "My children will be home from school soon, and they don't need to see this. Karen, please, I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to understand why." "Get off my property!" She slammed the door so hard the windows shook. I stood there on the porch for a minute, my heart pounding. I hadn't expected her to welcome me with open arms, but I also hadn't expected such a violent reaction. It was like she was genuinely shocked to learn that I existed. As I walked back to my car, I noticed the neighbor across the street peeking through her curtains. Great. Now I was the neighborhood drama. I sat in my car trying to figure out what to do next. I could wait for David to come home from work, but after Karen's reaction, I was pretty sure she'd be calling him to warn him that his secret daughter had shown up on their doorstep. My phone rang. Unknown local number. "Hello? Is this Jessica?" The voice was male, deep, familiar in a way that made my chest tight. "Yes. This is David. Karen called me. I think we need to talk." Hearing his voice after all these years, even though I'd only heard it once recently at Home Depot, was overwhelming. This was the voice that had read me bedtime stories when I was tiny. The voice I'd forgotten but somehow still recognized. "Yes, we do." "Can you meet me somewhere?" "Not at the house. Karen and the kids don't need to be involved in this." "Where?" "There's a coffee shop called Brewster's on Main Street in downtown Riverside. Do you know it?" "I can find it." "I'll be there in 20 minutes. The call ended and I realized I was shaking all over. This was happening. After 23 years, I was finally going to talk to my father. Brewster's was a small, cozy place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. I got there first and ordered a coffee I knew I wouldn't be able to drink, then sat at a table in the back corner where we'd have some privacy. When David walked in, my breath caught in my throat. Seeing him in person, up close, was surreal. He looked exactly like the photos, but also exactly like an older version of the man in my childhood pictures. The same blue eyes I saw in the mirror every morning, the same hands I'd inherited, the same slightly crooked smile. He spotted me immediately, probably because I looked exactly like him, just female and 25 years younger. He walked over slowly, like he was approaching a wild animal that might bolt at any second. "Jessica," he said quietly, sitting down across from me. "Hi, David." We sat in awkward silence for a moment, just staring at each other. I could see him taking in my features, probably seeing echoes of the baby he'd held 28 years ago. "You look exactly like your mother did at your age," he said finally. "I look exactly like you." He smiled sadly. "That too." "Why didn't you tell Karen about me?" The question came out more bluntly than I'd intended, but I needed to know. David's face crumpled a little. "Because I was a coward. Because I made a deal with her 28 years ago that I would never contact you again, and she agreed to stay and work on our marriage. Part of that deal was that we would never discuss you or your mother. So she doesn't know you've been sending me money? That you've been keeping track of my life?" He looked surprised. "Your mother told you about that?" "She told me everything last night. The birthday cards, the Christmas money, the $5,000 for my wedding. Karen doesn't know about any of it?" "No. I've been sending money through your mother because I couldn't stand the thought of you struggling when I could help. But Karen thinks I cut all contact with you when you were a baby. So for 19 years, you've been lying to your wife about me the same way my mother was lying to me about you." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "I suppose that's one way to look at it." "How would you look at it?" David was quiet for a long time, staring into his coffee cup. "I was 26 when you were born," he said finally. "Karen and I had been married for 3 years, and we had a 1-year-old son. I was working 2 jobs trying to keep us afloat, and Karen was struggling with postpartum depression. Our marriage was falling apart. So you had an affair with my mother. I met Linda at work. She was smart and funny, and she made me feel like I was more than just a paycheck and a diaper changer. I told myself I was going to leave Karen anyway, so what difference did it make? But you didn't leave her. When Linda told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I realized I was going to destroy 2 families instead of 1. I had a son who needed me, and now I was going to have another child who needed me, and I couldn't be there for both of you the way you deserved. So you chose. Karen gave me an ultimatum, but honestly, I think I'd already made my choice before she forced the issue. My son was already here, already calling me daddy. I couldn't abandon him. But you could abandon me." Tears started forming in his eyes. "I told myself it would be easier for you if you didn't know me at all, rather than having a part-time father who was always torn between 2 families. I thought I was doing the right thing." "And now? Do you still think you did the right thing?" He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since he'd sat down. "No," he said quietly. "I think I was a selfish coward who chose the easier path and convinced himself it was noble. I think I robbed you of having a father and robbed myself of knowing my daughter." "Then why didn't you ever fight for me? Why didn't you ever try harder to be in my life?" "Because every time I thought about reaching out, I remembered how much it hurt you when I left. Your mother would send me updates sometimes. Pictures, report cards, little stories about things you'd said or done. And I could see how happy you were with Tom. I didn't want to confuse you or mess up the stability you'd found. That wasn't your decision to make." "You're right. It wasn't. But I was so afraid of hurting you more than I already had." I sat back in my chair, trying to process everything he was telling me. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to tell him how many nights I'd cried wishing I could talk to my dad just one more time. Part of me wanted to understand the impossible position he'd been put in as a young man with 2 families depending on him. "Do your other kids know about me?" I asked. No. Karen and I agreed that we would never tell them. She was afraid it would make them question our marriage, question whether I really loved them. And now Karen knows I exist because I showed up on your doorstep. She's not handling it well. She feels like I've been lying to her for our entire marriage. Haven't you? Yes, I have. And now I have to figure out how to explain to my 17-year-old son and 15-year-old daughter that they have a half-sister they've never met. I thought about those kids in the Facebook photos. The boy who looked so much like David, the girl with Karen's smile. They were about to have their world turned upside down because I decided I needed answers. I'm sorry, I said. I didn't think about how this would affect them when I came to your house. Don't apologize. You have every right to want answers. I'm the one who created this mess. We sat in silence again, both lost in our own thoughts. What happens now? I asked finally. I don't know. Karen wants me to ask you to stay away, to pretend this never happened. She's terrified this is going to destroy our family. And what do you want? David looked at me with such sadness and longing that it made my chest ache. I want to know everything about you. I want to know what your favorite subject was in school, and who your best friends are, and what made you choose your career, and whether you're happy in your marriage. I want to know what you were like as a teenager, and whether you ever wondered about me, and if you can ever forgive me for being such a coward. I did wonder about you. Every single day. I used to make up stories about what you were like, what you would say about things that were happening in my life. I used to pretend you were watching my softball games from heaven. I was watching them. Not from heaven, but I was there. Your mother sent me the game schedules sometimes, and I would sit in my car in the parking lot and watch you play. My heart stopped. What? Your graduation from high school. I was there in the back row. Your college graduation, too. Your mother called and told me when and where it was. I couldn't miss it. You were at my graduations? I have pictures. I know I had no right to be there, but I couldn't help myself. Those were the two proudest days of my life. I started crying then. Really crying. All those years of feeling like my achievements didn't matter to my dead father, and he'd actually been there watching. Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you let me know you were there? Because I was afraid you'd hate me. I was afraid you'd ask me why I left, and I wouldn't have a good enough answer. I don't hate you, I said through my tears. I'm angry and confused and hurt, but I don't hate you. David reached across the table like he was going to take my hand, then stopped himself. Can I? Would it be okay if I hugged you? I know I don't have the right to ask, but... I stood up and walked around the table. He stood too, and for the first time in 23 years, I hugged my father. He held me so tightly, like he was afraid I might disappear if he let go. I could feel him shaking, and I realized he was crying too. I'm so sorry, Jessica. I'm so sorry for all of it. We stood there in the middle of the coffee shop, holding each other and crying, while other customers tried to pretend they weren't staring at us. When we finally sat back down, David pulled out his phone. I know this is probably too much to ask, but would you mind if I gave you my phone number? I understand if you need time to think about everything, but I'd like to stay in touch if you're open to it. I programmed his number into my phone, still not quite believing this was real. What are you going to tell Karen and the kids? The truth. That I made mistakes when I was young, and those mistakes hurt people I should have protected. That I have a daughter I love who deserves to be acknowledged and welcomed into this family, even if it's complicated. And if Karen can't handle that... David was quiet for a long moment. Then I guess I'll have to choose again. But this time, I'm not going to choose fear. 3 days passed before David called me. 3 days of me checking my phone constantly, wondering if he'd changed his mind about choosing differently this time. When he finally did call, his voice sounded exhausted. Jessica? I talked to Karen and the kids. It didn't go well. My heart sank. I'm sorry. I know this is all my fault. No, it's not your fault. It's mine. I should have handled this 28 years ago, instead of letting it become this massive secret that's now exploding in everyone's faces. What did you tell them? Everything. About your mother, about you, about the money I've been sending, about being at your graduations. Karen is, She's furious. She feels like our entire marriage has been built on a lie. What about your kids? David was quiet for a moment. Ryan, my 17-year-old, is curious about you. He keeps asking questions. What you're like, what you do for work, if you look like him. But Madison, my 15-year-old, she's taking it really hard. She feels like you're going to replace her as my daughter. The guilt hit me like a physical pain. These kids had done nothing wrong, and now their family was falling apart because I'd needed answers. David, maybe we should take a step back. I don't want to be the reason your family breaks up. Jessica, my family was already broken. We've just been pretending it wasn't. Karen and I have been living with this secret between us for 19 years, and it's been eating away at our marriage the whole time. What do you mean? Every time you achieve something, graduation, your wedding, getting your first job, I wanted to celebrate, but I couldn't. Every Father's Day, when Karen would make plans for us to do something as a family, I'd think about the daughter who wasn't there. Every time Ryan or Madison would tell me I was the best dad in the world, I'd feel like a fraud because I knew I'd abandoned another child. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. I'd been so focused on how his choice had affected me that I hadn't considered how it might have affected his relationship with the family he'd chosen. Where does this leave us? Karen has asked me to choose, again. She says if I want to have a relationship with you, she'll take the kids and leave. She can't handle sharing me with the family I had before her. My stomach dropped. And what did you tell her? I told her I understand why she's scared, but that I'm not going to abandon my daughter again. I told her we could go to counseling, that we could figure out a way to make this work, but that you're part of my life now whether she likes it or not. I was quiet, trying to process what this meant. Jessica, there's something else. Ryan wants to meet you. He does? He says he's always wanted a sister. He keeps saying it's cool that he has this whole other family he didn't know about. I think he's romanticizing it a little bit, but he's genuinely excited about the possibility of getting to know you. And Madison? Madison is convinced that you're going to take her place. She's always been Daddy's little girl, and she's terrified that I'm going to love you more because I missed out on so much of your childhood. That's heartbreaking. It is. But I think if she met you, she'd realize that there's enough love to go around. That having another daughter doesn't mean I love her any less. I thought about it for a moment. Meeting my half-siblings felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But I also couldn't shake the image of that 17-year-old boy who wanted a sister, or the 15-year-old girl who was scared of losing her father's love. Would Karen be okay with that? Me meeting them? Karen won't be okay with any of this, but they're old enough to make their own decisions about whether they will want to know their half-sister. 2 weeks later, I found myself sitting in a restaurant across from Ryan Mitchell. David had arranged for us to meet for lunch while Madison was at a friend's house. She'd refused to come. Ryan looked exactly like David had in the old photos Mom had shown me, just with a modern teenager haircut and a Lakers jersey. When he walked in, he spotted me immediately, probably because I looked like a female version of him. "Holy crap," he said, sitting down across from me. "We really do look alike." Yeah, we do. It's kind of weird, right? Weird, but cool. I've always wondered what it would be like to have siblings who actually looked like me. Heck, we spent the first hour just comparing features and mannerisms. We both had the same habit of running our hands through our hair when we were nervous. We both were left-handed. We both hated mushrooms and loved horror movies. "Dad showed me pictures of you from when you were little," Ryan said over his burger. "You looked exactly like Madison did at that age." "How is she handling all this?" Ryan's expression got more serious. "Not great. She's been crying a lot, and she won't talk to Dad. She keeps asking Mom if we're going to move away." "I don't want to break up your family, Ryan. That was never my intention." "I know. Dad explained the whole situation to us. He said Mom made him choose between families when you were a baby, and he chose us, but that he's regretted it ever since." "Are you mad at him? For lying to you about me all these years?" Ryan thought about it for a moment. "I'm more confused than mad. Like, I get why he made the choice he made. I can't imagine him not being in my life. But I also feel bad that you grew up thinking he was dead when he was just 20 minutes away. It's complicated. Yeah, everything about this is complicated. He paused. But I'm glad I got to meet you. I've always wanted an older sister. I've always wanted siblings. We exchanged phone numbers before leaving, and Ryan promised to keep trying to convince Madison to meet me. Over the next few months, David and I started building a relationship. We met for coffee once a week, and he'd tell me stories about my childhood that I was too young to remember. He showed me pictures he'd kept hidden in his office at work, photos of me that Mom had sent over the years, my school pictures, copies of report cards I'd brought home. I have a whole album, he admitted one afternoon. Karen doesn't know about it. It's in a safety deposit box at the bank. You kept all of it? Every single thing your mother sent me. Every picture, every report card, every little drawing you made that she thought I'd want to see. I couldn't be there for your childhood, but I tried to document it as much as I could. Meanwhile, his marriage was falling apart. Karen had moved into the guest bedroom and was talking to divorce lawyers. She felt betrayed not just by the existence of his secret daughter, but by years of secret financial support and emotional investment in a family she thought he'd left behind. She says she would have made different choices if she'd known you were still part of my life, David told me during one of our coffee dates. She says she feels like she's been competing with ghosts for 19 years. Maybe she has been. What do you mean? David, you never really left my life. You were always there, watching from a distance, supporting me financially, keeping track of my milestones. In some ways, you were more involved in my life than some fathers who live with their kids full-time. But I wasn't there when you needed me. No, but you weren't really fully present for Karen's kids either, were you? You were always carrying this guilt and longing for the daughter you'd given up. He was quiet for a long time, staring out the window of the coffee shop. I ruined everything, didn't I? I tried to keep everyone happy and ended up making everyone miserable. You made impossible choices in an impossible situation. But David, you can't keep living in the past. You have to decide what you want your future to look like. 3 months after our first meeting, David called to tell me that Karen had filed for divorce. She says she can't trust me anymore. That if I could lie about something this big for 19 years, she'll never be able to believe anything I tell her. I'm sorry. Don't be. She's right to leave me. I should have been honest with her from the beginning, even if it meant losing her back then. Living with this secret has poisoned our marriage from the inside. What about Ryan and Madison? Ryan wants to keep getting to know you. He's actually excited about the idea of having 2 homes now. He says it'll be like having 2 Christmases. But Madison blames you for the divorce. She thinks if you'd just stayed away, our family would have stayed together. That broke my heart. A 15-year-old girl was losing the only family structure she'd ever known, and in her mind, it was because her half-sister had been selfish enough to want a relationship with their shared father. Maybe I should back off for a while. Give her some space. Jessica, I'm not going to let you disappear from my life again. Madison will come around eventually, but even if she doesn't, I'm not going to abandon you a second time. Even if it costs you your relationship with her? I hope it doesn't come to that. But yes, even if it does. I've spent 28 years living with the regret of choosing fear over love. I'm not going to make that mistake again. 6 months later, David moved into his own apartment. Ryan stayed with him every other week and spent a lot of that time getting to know me. We'd have sibling dinners where he'd tell me embarrassing stories about David, and I'd share stories about growing up thinking our father was dead. It's weird, Ryan said one night over pizza. I have 2 lives now. In one life, Dad is the guy who's been my hero my whole life. In the other life, he's the guy who abandoned his first daughter and lied about it for decades. I'm still trying to figure out how both things can be true about the same person. People are complicated, I said. Good people can make bad choices, and those choices can hurt people even when they're trying to protect them. Do you forgive him? I thought about it. Did I forgive him? I'd been asking myself that question for months. I understand him, I said finally. I understand why he made the choices he made, even if I don't agree with them. And I'm grateful that I finally got to meet him and have him in my life, even if it took 28 years to get here. Madison never did agree to meet me. According to Ryan, she was doing better since her parents' divorce became final, but she still blamed me for breaking up her family. David tried to explain that the family had been broken long before I came along, but she wasn't ready to hear that. Maybe someday, David said hopefully. Maybe when she's older, she'll understand that having you in my life doesn't mean I love her any less. And maybe she won't. Maybe she'll always see me as the person who destroyed her family. Would you change it? If you could go back and not look up that Facebook profile, would you? I thought about it seriously. My decision to find David had consequences I never could have anticipated. His marriage was over. His daughter hated me. His son was dealing with the emotional complexity of having a father who was both his hero and someone who'd abandoned another child. But I also thought about the coffee dates, where David and I talked about everything we'd missed in each other's lives. The photo album he'd finally shown me, filled with pictures of me growing up that he'd treasured in secret for decades. The way he'd cried when I told him about my wedding day, wishing he could have walked me down the aisle. No, I said. I wouldn't change it. I'm sorry that other people got hurt in the process, but I needed to know the truth. I needed to have the chance to decide for myself what kind of relationship I wanted with my father. Even knowing what it cost. Even knowing what it cost. A year later, I got a text from an unknown number. Hi, this is Madison. Ryan gave me your number. I think I'm ready to meet you. We met at the same restaurant where Ryan and I had first met. Madison looked exactly like I had at 15. Same dark hair, same blue eyes, same stubborn set to her jaw that I recognized from looking in the mirror. She was nervous and defensive at first, making it clear that she was only there because her therapist had suggested it might help her process her feelings about the divorce. I want you to know that I don't blame you anymore, she said over her salad. My therapist helped me understand that my parents' marriage had problems that had nothing to do with you. I'm glad to hear that. I never wanted to be the reason your family broke up. But I also want you to know that I'm not looking for a sister. Ryan might be excited about having this whole new family, but I don't need that. I just want to understand why Dad chose you over keeping our family together. He didn't choose me over your family, Madison. He chose honesty over secrets. Your parents' marriage might have survived if he'd kept lying about me, but it wouldn't have been a healthy marriage. We talked for 2 hours. She told me about the anger she'd felt when she learned I existed, the fear that David would love me more because he'd missed my entire childhood. I told her about growing up thinking my father was dead, about the hole in my life that I'd never been able to fill. By the end of lunch, we weren't friends, but we weren't enemies either. We were two women who'd been hurt by the same man's choices in different ways, trying to figure out how to move forward. I don't think I'll ever think of you as my sister, she said as we were leaving. But I don't hate you anymore. And I'm glad Dad doesn't have to keep living with that secret. It wasn't the warm family reunion I might have hoped for, but it was honest. And after a lifetime of lies, honesty felt like a gift. Now, 2 years later, David and I have dinner together once a week. Ryan considers me his big sister and texts me constantly about school drama and girl problems. Madison and I are cordial when we see each other at family gatherings, but we'll probably never be close. David is dating someone new, a woman named Carol who knows the whole story about me from day one. She's kind and patient, and she doesn't seem threatened by the complicated family dynamics David brings to the relationship. I learned my lesson about keeping secrets, David told me. If Carol and I get serious, she'll know exactly what she's signing up for. Mom and I have a better relationship now, too. It took months of family therapy, but I eventually came to understand that she'd been trying to protect me in the only way she knew how. Tom has been amazing through all of this, supportive and understanding, never making me feel guilty for wanting to know my biological father. I always knew this day might come, Tom told me. I just wanted to make sure that when it did, you knew you had a family who loved you no matter what you decided. So Reddit, Here's my question. Was I wrong to seek out my biological father when I knew it might destroy his current family? Some people think I was selfish, that I should have left well enough alone when I found out he was alive and happy with his other family. That I had Tom as a father figure and didn't need to complicate everyone's lives by insisting on a relationship with David. Other people think I had every right to know the truth about my own life and to make my own decisions about what kind of relationship I wanted with my biological father. I know that my choice to contact David led to his divorce. I know that Madison will probably always see me as the person who broke up her family, even though the problems in that family existed long before I came along. I know that Karen had to rebuild her life at 50 because secrets she thought were buried came to light. But I also know that I finally have answers to questions I've been asking my whole life. I know that my father didn't abandon me because he didn't love me. He left because he thought it was the best thing for everyone involved. I know that he never stopped thinking about me, never stopped loving me, never stopped regretting his choice. I have a relationship with my father now. Not the relationship we might have had if he'd made different choices 28 years ago, but a real, honest relationship built on truth instead of lies. I also have a half-brother who's become one of my closest friends, and a half-sister who, while not warm toward me, at least doesn't hate me anymore. Was it worth it? Was it worth the pain it caused to multiple families to get these answers? I think about this question a lot, especially when I see how the divorce affected Ryan and Madison, or when I think about Karen having to start over in her 50s. But then I think about that little girl who used to cry herself to sleep, wishing she could talk to her daddy just one more time. I think about the woman who spent 28 years believing her father was dead when he was actually alive and watching her life from a distance. And I think the answer is yes. It was worth it. Not because I don't regret the pain it caused others, but because everyone deserves to know the truth about their own life. Everyone deserves the right to make their own choices about their relationships, even when those choices are complicated and messy. I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago when I saw that Facebook photo. I'm someone who understands that families are complicated, that good people can make terrible choices, and that sometimes the truth hurts everyone involved, but is still necessary. I'm someone who has a relationship with her biological father, for better or worse, and I'm someone who finally has answers to the questions that shaped my entire childhood. So what do you think, Reddit? Did I do the right thing, or should I have left my dead father's secret buried? Update. A lot of people in the comments are asking about my relationship with David now, and whether he has any regrets about his choice to prioritize honesty over his marriage to Karen. David and I talked about this recently. He says that while he's sad about how much pain this situation caused Karen and the kids, he doesn't regret finally being able to have an open relationship with me. He says the guilt of keeping me a secret was eating him alive, and that his marriage to Karen was built on a foundation of lies that was never going to be sustainable long term. As for Karen, she's actually doing well. She's in therapy, she's started dating again, and according to Ryan, she seems happier than she's been in years. He thinks that on some level, she's relieved not to have to compete with the ghost of David's first family anymore. Madison and I will probably never be close, but we're civil. She's in college now and seems to be thriving. David says she's considering studying psychology, partly because her own therapy experience was so helpful in processing all of this. Ryan is a senior in high school now and still considers me his big sister. He's applying to colleges near where I live so we can see each other more often. And me? I'm grateful every day that I was brave enough to knock on that door 2 years ago, even knowing how much pain it would cause. Some truths are worth the cost of uncovering them.
Wow, what an incredible journey that was. Jessica's story really makes you think about the power of family secrets and the price we pay for both truth and lies. I mean, imagine discovering your supposedly dead father has been living 20 minutes away your entire adult life, secretly watching your graduations and contributing to your wedding. But here's what I really want to know. What would you have done in Jessica's position? When you found that Facebook photo, would you have been able to just walk away and pretend you never saw it? Or would you have done exactly what Jessica did and demanded answers, no matter the cost? And let's talk about David's impossible choice. Do you think he was a coward who abandoned his daughter? Or was he a young man trying to make the best decision he could in a terrible situation? Should he have fought harder to be in Jessica's life from the beginning, even if it meant potentially losing his son? What about Jessica's final decision to reach out to him? She knew it might destroy his current family, and it did lead to his divorce. Was that selfish, or did she have every right to seek out the truth about her own life? I'm honestly torn on this one. Part of me thinks Jessica deserved to know her father was alive and make her own choices about their relationship. But another part of me feels for those kids who had their world turned upside down through no fault of their own. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Team Jessica or Team Leave It Alone? Did she handle this the right way, or would you have done something completely different? I love hearing different perspectives on these complex family situations because there's rarely a clear right or wrong answer. And hey, if this story of family secrets and long-lost fathers kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible Reddit stories just like this one. We've got plenty more jaw-dropping family drama coming your way. Until next time, remember, sometimes the truth really can set you free, even when it comes at a cost. I'll see you in the next video.